Hey guys, how you doing today? This will be my second time recording this because the first time, for some reason, the recording got lost right at the end. Just walking home from a friend's place. Sorry if the video goes dark for a bit. It's getting late, as you can see, pretty dark. I think the big news and the thing I'd really like to make this video about is so insider sources are starting to say that the Trudeau government is going to make a big announcement on his throne speech in September, late September. And they're saying it surrounds social security and the welfare system and how the Trudeau government wants to do something big to reform it. This has all the hallmarks of transitioning the CERB, which is a basic income style project, into a full-scale basic income. Something like the CERB is large enough scale that you can see the success of it. It's really obvious, the success of it. You compare nations that received a CERB to nations that did not. And economically, the nations that had a CERB are better. They're better off. Their economies are faring much better. The people are feeling much safer. Everything feels a lot better. And so it's really obvious that what needs to be passed, especially during this crucial time, is a basic income. What we're facing is the wholesale collapse of capitalism. That the capitalist system always has this sort of too big to fail mantra about it. It is not too big to fail. And the bigger you are, the harder you fail. And capitalism is going to fail, and it's going to fail very hard. And we are going to need governmental support systems already in place, already existing, in order to ensure that the people who are getting caught up in the coming capitalist collapses are protected. I've experienced 3 collapses in my lifetime, so don't you goddamn tell me that it can't happen. Don't you goddamn tell me it can't happen. Every time this system collapses, they juggle things around, they shuffle some stuff around, right? But all they end up doing is pushing the collapse down the road. That's all they've ever done. That's all they're ever doing. And eventually it comes and it collapses hard. It collapses hard. And right now, the wealthy have every reason to want the system to collapse as hard as it can because they get to make off with the spoils. That's why they're against a basic income. The funding of a basic income would be so infinitesimally small compared to the amount of loot that the capitalist class has taken out of this society. The amount of effort and work that we have poured into the capitalist class's coffers so that they can then turn around and walk out of the room as if they earned all of that, and they can pretend as though we're just going to allow that to happen. We're not going to allow that to happen. I refuse to see even a single individual suffer a moment more from the greed of these rapacious capitalists. Fuck them. Fuck everything about them. They need to go away. They don't do anything. They don't contribute. Near as I can tell, the only thing they're willing to spend money on is to pay other people to tell us how great they are. That's the only time a capitalist is willing to spend money on the society, is to just buy some sort of media outlet that's supposed to tell us how great they are. And so the coming collapse needs to be responded to. And it needs to be responded by something like a basic income. And I think the Trudeau government has painted itself into a corner now, because everyone with a brain in their head, that's about 60% of the society, by the way, everyone with a brain in their head is already on board with a basic income. This riff that says it's not affordable, I mean, the childcare benefit was sure affordable when Stephen Harper was passing it, which is a basic income for children, which we know for every dollar you put in gives you $2 back in economic activity. So here's a program that's paying for itself double over, helping out children of our nation, has been a complete and resounding success, something that we consider completely affordable. But we can't extend that to adults. I think you're nuts if you're saying that. Like, I don't think you're actually thinking clearly. And you don't really understand how an economy works. Like, here's how the economy actually works, friend. The government prints money, okay? It prints it out of thin air. Money is just digits on a screen. It isn't actually a thing. It's not an object, okay? It then distributes that money to whoever it wants to, circulates it around so that people can circulate it around, right? So right now it gives money to banks, who then give money to individuals, who then run businesses. That's the gift. That's the grift, okay? Or that's the riff. So then those businesses say to the populace, if you would like food and shelter, if you would like to eat, you better distribute these goods. You better make this food, right? You better make these objects. Because if you don't, you're gonna starve. That's the capitalist deal. Work for us or starve. Okay. Neat idea. And we're all hit by that choice because this is how the society is structured. And we've convinced ourselves and conned ourselves into believing for a little while that capitalism is the greatest system in the world. We're literally like, little dance break here. We've literally convinced ourselves into believing that our drug addiction is the greatest thing for our health. Like, that's where we're at in the midst of this. We're just believing that this insane self-destructive, never-ending party system that takes the human spirit and crushes it through a machine that does not care about it whatsoever. That this is good for us. That we're actually better off now that we are enslaved in this capitalist system that eats all our time. Man, we're gonna have another dance break here. This time you get to see it though. Ooh, yeah. Gonna wait until we're done. Past here. Dance break. Party. Yeah, break it down. What? Yeah. I'm the most uncool person in the world. Oh, just watch. Now my YouTube video is gonna get flagged. It's gonna get pulled. Yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen. Because I'm super important. I'm a special person in the world. Yeah, whatever. So when you do something like you pass a basic income, right? So instead of printing the money and giving it to the bank, who then gives it to businesses, who then say to the populace, work for us or starve, instead of that, you print the money, as the government does in the first place, and then you distribute it to the populace. And then the populace figures out what they want to do with it, right? Without any worthless middlemen in the midst, i.e. capitalists. Without any of this nonsense of, hey, if you want to starve to death, or if you don't want to starve to death, you better go work for a capitalist, right? None of that. And what the capitalists, i.e. the conservatives, are saying is that it's going to be unaffordable because they're illiterate, because they don't actually read, because they don't actually know anything, because they want you to believe that the government operates as a business operates. And maybe they do believe that. Maybe they do believe that the government should operate as a business operates. A government is not a business. A government is not a business. It cannot be a business. It cannot be run like a business. You can't fire your citizens, and no business that exists can print its own money. Like, you can't bankrupt the government because the government is just the sum total will of the populace. The government can't go broke, okay? All the government can do is funnel money into projects that fail. That is all the government can do. But at least it still funnels money into something. At least people are still working at something. At least they're still building something. At least they're still doing something. At least they then spend that money on food and shelter. At least they're accomplishing anything, right? If you're funneling money into the populace so that they can have food and shelter, to build a monolith, right? To do anything. If you're withholding food and shelter from people unless they do this activity that you declare that they do, you're just as effective as any capitalist, okay? Because the only reason any capitalist enterprise exists is not for the profit of the capitalist. It's to feed and clothe the citizens. That's the only reason the system exists at all. If the citizens didn't need to eat, if the citizens didn't need shelter or they would die, right? They wouldn't spend a moment on these capitalists. They wouldn't give two fucks about them, right? Unless the capitalists made it worth their while in a real and legitimate sense. Creating projects that actually matter to the people who live in the neighborhoods, in the communities, without exploiting them. I love listening to people talk and be in love. It's so wonderful. Walking by people who are just enjoying each other. Oh my God, it is. It's so nice. People being loud and oh my God. And some people get annoyed by that. I don't. I love it. I love listening in. I love hearing what they have to say. It's so brilliant. People are so beautiful. I don't know nearly enough people, and I wish I did. Right, we're talking about capitalism, how shitty it is. And and how it relates to the basic income. So basic income, instead of funneling it through stupid projects that achieve nothing, you funnel it into the hands of people, right? Just ordinary citizens. And you don't exclude anybody, right? So the poor rural farmer, quote unquote poor rural farmer, but so the poor rural farmer is getting a support, just like the inner city urban kid, right? He's also getting support. Everybody's getting support. Everyone's just getting a little bit of a like, hey, how you doing? It doesn't matter how bad you collapse. You're going to have a certain level of income. You're going to have a certain level of money. You're going to have a certain level of support. It doesn't matter how badly you did this year. You're always going to be able to pay that bill. You're always going to be able to see and move on to the next thing. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful gift to the populace. And that's exactly what 2020 needs to end on, man. It needs to end with a beautiful gift. What a year this has been. What a stupid, dumb year. What a stupid, dumb year. Life needs to be easier for people, dude. It needs to be easier than this. It needs to be easier than going through just consistent, constant collapses. It needs to be easier than tolerating just the absolute nonsense that we've been tolerating. It just needs to be easier than this. Like, I don't understand why two people need to work in a family unit. That seems wild to me. We need to get rid of that. That's so dumb. Like, for goodness sakes, it wasn't that long ago. Like, go watch Married with Children, for Christ's sakes. That was in the mid-'80s, right? Al Bundy was a shoe salesman, for God's sakes. He was a shoe salesman, and not a very good one. He was a goddamn shoe salesman in a mall. He owned a house. He had a wife who did not work, and he supported 2 kids and a dog and a car. And the worst thing he had going on was that his wife wanted to have too much sex with him. And his car wasn't very good. Like, if I had Al Bundy's life, I wouldn't even say a goddamn word. I don't know what he's complaining about. Like, what a commentary on human nature, man. Like, Al Bundy has everything a man could ever want, and he's still miserable. Like, if you don't learn to love yourself, if you don't learn to be in your own skin and love who you are, you're gonna end up like Al Bundy, living in this sort of teenage fantasy where he scored a bunch of touchdowns in a single game of high school. This was like the greatest moment of his life. Now he's a shoe salesman and he hates everything. But I think that really speaks to it. Like, he's just doing something that he hates. He's just doing something so that he can get the money he needs in order to have food and shelter. And would he do it? Would he do it? I just think that a basic income is going to be good for everyone. I think it's going to be good for everyone ultimately. It's going to smooth things out, right? Like, you're printing, what you're doing fundamentally is you're giving the populace money, right? In order for them to circulate it amongst themselves. That's what a basic income is. That instead of giving money to a rich guy who's literally going to take it and put it in a bank account somewhere and then not give a shit about it, you're circulating it into the populace, and you're saying to the populace, oh, okay, you need food and shelter. Well, go get it. There are people growing food. There are people distributing food. There are people doing all of these things that we need done. And they're doing it for very high compensation. And I gotta tell you, given the amount of, like, we're facing like an employment crisis, right? We're facing this situation. It's so dumb to me, right? People, like, capitalists and conservatives will respond with this idea that, well, people will work less, or people will stop working. Good. People should work less. Everyone should work less. Why do you not want people to work less? We're having an unemployment crisis, while simultaneously people are working their asses off, right? You've got one group of people who are working their goddamn asses off just to keep afloat. And then you've got another group of people who are drowning or have drowned, who are having their lives dismantled, who aren't able to keep things going, who aren't able to make things work because they can't find employment, because they have to work two jobs. Because, for God's sakes, there's this picture circulating on the internet where there's this lady who's doing like a delivery service while she's carrying around two kids. Like, what the fuck is wrong with us? What the fuck is wrong with us? Are you kidding me? A woman with two children should never ever be in this position, ever. And there's just something fundamentally wrong with us, that we can see a picture like that. A young lady walking around with her two children and a big pack on her back that's full of stuff that she has to deliver. Like, what the fuck is this? Is this like, that's not even feudalism. Like, we're talking about like going back to like tribal societies where people have to carry sticks on their back for a mile. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we're nuts. We're nuts that we can see that and actually think that that's rational or reasonable, and that we should continue tolerating it. Like, we need to slow down. We need to work less. Because simply having people work less, simply slowing that down, simply having there be more people doing less things, right? That would open up the job market, wouldn't it? If suddenly people were put in a position where they were working 30 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, oh wow, there's a little bit of breathing room, right? maybe some of these people who are unemployed or underemployed or living in a precarious situation would be able to find their way into an economy more easily if the work that we were doing was spread across more people. But no, we can't have that. Everyone needs to be terrified. Everyone needs to be exhausted. Everyone needs to be completely running simply on momentum in order to maintain a system that has already collapsed. Like, the capitalist system has failed. We are really living at a position right now where we're beseeching feudal lords, fundamentally, to please ensure the safety and health of their subjects. That's really where we're at. And if the feudal lord isn't willing to look to the health and safety of their subjects, then the subjects have no choice but to revolt, to go on strike, to unionize. They don't have a choice because they don't actually have a functioning democratic system. They don't actually have any way to ameliorate the ruling system. Now I'm talking more about the States. But should the basic income go through here in Canada, that is a resounding success for democracy. That is a resounding success for democracy. That democracy itself is re-justified through the passage of a basic income, because it means that the system can respond rationally to the will of the populace. It means that the democratic system functions. It's messy, it's stupid, it's full of all of the absurdities that exist within the human consciousness. It manifests the absolute worst in humans, but it should also have the potential to manifest the absolute best in humans. And should we actually pass a basic income in order to eliminate poverty, in order to get people on a floor that they can stand on, instead of constantly throwing them into the mire, into a system that collapses every 7 years or so, and absolutely sets the populace back on its heels. Like, we can do this. We can do this. And the worst thing that will happen is that a handful of billionaires will make slightly less billions. And that is the worst thing that can happen. Like, even in a hypothetical universe, there's no way, like, this isn't going to result in starvation. It isn't going to result in this collapsing, ridiculous nonsense that the conservatives always talk about. When they were passing healthcare, they said exactly the same thing. And it just didn't happen. Because capitalists and conservatives are liars. They don't actually understand the system that they live in. And they refuse to actually confront the reality of capitalism. And they refuse to actually acknowledge that they've moralized something that is not moralizable, right? People don't fall into poverty because they're lazy. People fall into poverty because the system is structured in order to have people fall into poverty. Capitalism requires poverty. It's not a moral decision to be poor. It's something that happens to you. It's like a disease in that way, and we can cure the disease. Anyway, guys, that's the end of this talk. I hope you guys are doing well out there. I hope you're fighting the good fight. I hope you're finding love and fighting Nazis. Do your best. God bless.